Welcome to Tanya Inside Out at G4 Tafshin Pei Vav. We're up to chapter 41. Last week we went through chapters 38, 39, 40, which create a kind of unit unto themselves. You know Tanya? You've learned Tanya at all? Yeah? You've learned Tanya? Bit? Okay. So those chapters were talking about Kavanah. And we spoke about Kavanah as a mitzvah. They're sandwiched in between. They follow a deep analysis of how choshev it is the actual Maisa mitzvah. So really, up until chapters 37, we're really giving over how important the Maisa mitzvah is, and then the Rebbe transitions from here now to the end of the book, basically, all about Kavanah. So we introduced the concept of Kavanah, but we didn't get into any. We just spoke generally. Welcome. We didn't speak about any actual details. I didn't last week when I got in my car. I had a big halat. I didn't even say the whole shir. I don't think I said the words Ava and Yira. Maybe I did, but I didn't emphasize that. We just spoke about Kavanah. Kavanah is Ava and Yira. Yeah? It means the emotional aspect of the mitzvah. And according to the Tanya, the way I understand it, we're actually talking about what motivates the mitzvah. It's not the intensity that you're doing the mitzvah per se, that would come from this, but it's not the concentration within the mitzvah while you're doing the mitzvah, which is probably what most of us would think Kavanah is, how much you concentrate on the mitzvah. It's why are you doing the mitzvah? What's motivating you to do the mitzvah? And I suppose one of the most obvious things that you would think about, why would you do a mitzvah, would be the fear of punishment for not doing the mitzvah. The same thing. Fear of punishment and the desire for reward is the exact same thing. So you're shaking your head. But that was probably one of the first things that would come to mind for some people, or maybe in previous years. But the Rebbe spends the next 13 chapters, going through all the details of Ava and Yira. Those are the two primary emotions. And he doesn't mention Yiras HaOynish at all. That, according to the Tanya, is not on the smorgasbord, so to speak, of emotional reasons why you should serve God. That's not called a kavanah. That's not called a real reason to serve Hashem. According to the Tanya, they call it here. In other places, it's not so clear like that. But he doesn't mention Yiras HaOynish. Not that he says there isn't Yiras HaOynish. Not that he says there aren't Oinshim and there isn't Gan Eden. It doesn't say that b'chlal. The Vadai, there's for sure reward and punishment. But the reason why, the way I understand it, he doesn't mention Yiras HaOynish as part of reasons why you would serve Hashem is because that's not really called Yiras Shamayim. Yiras Shamayim is when the other person becomes real to you. When we're talking about in the context of Hashem, you could translate the word Yira as respect in your marriage, exactly the same concept. If you're scared of getting an Oynesh, he isn't real to you. You're real to yourself. You're not being motivated by him. You're being motivated by the fear of getting a patch. Well, the same way with schar. What's that got to do with Hashem? That's just to do with you. So that isn't even beginning on the process. Maybe that's a machlokes in the Ramchal and the Balatanya, because the Ramchal and also the Rambam as well say that this is and nearly everyone says that Yiras HaOynish is the beginning of your journey into Lishma. Everyone understands that Yiras HaOynish is not Lishma. Yeah? It's not about him, or Ava Schar is not Lishma. It's about you. And you would think, and we throw away the statement, Mitoch lo Lishma bo Lishma, that if you're involved in serving God because you're scared of him, you're scared of getting beaten up, then eventually you'll come to serve him Lishma. Yeah? I would argue I would argue the opposite. I would argue that and the more Naim, the understand that he said on that Chazal, Mitoich lo lishma bo lishma, there's no havtacha, promise that if you're serving Hashem lo lishma, that you're going to come to lishma. Why would that be? If a guy's in a marriage and he's narcissistic in his approach to his wife, and he does things for her, but it's all about him. Yeah. What do you think that's going to get any better if he just keeps going in that path? It's just all of a sudden she's going to start to become real to him. I mean, things could happen, but you would think just al derech hateva, if he's like trying to manipulate, well, that's really what it is, yeah? Yiras ha'onesh and avas schar is a kind of form of manipulation, to say it very strongly. You're trying to get something out of God. It's like he's an ATM machine. Again, take this with a pinch of salt, just to get the point across, yeah? You're trying to get something from him, or you're trying to avoid a negative consequence from him. So in truth, when you think of it like this, he becomes a kind of like a means to an end. He's like your masur, yeah? Or he's the judge who you just don't want him to beat you up. Why would you think that just that kind of service would eventually lead to a genuine, selfless service? So maybe you could argue that the mitzvahs themselves are so powerful that if you're involved in mitzvahs and they'll bring you to serving him, you'll appreciate him eventually for himself, who he is, and then you won't be motivated by the prospect of oinshim and schar, yeah. But there's also the other side of the argument that maybe not. Maybe you'll just become mamash more and more narcissistic. I deal with a lot of people nowadays, and I see it's heartbreaking. Some of the women's stories that I hear, and I see like what happens in a marriage. See, it's like a phenomenon in our frum world, because really most people are very good. It's not like when you go into like much lower levels of society, when there's, I'm not saying that aren't exceptional cases, but on average, the lowest level of Am Yisrael is not comparable to the lowest level of other societies. Yeah, not even close. Yeah, so you've got a lot of men who are striving, a lot of frum men who are striving deeply to be very good husbands. Yeah, and what happens, and it happens a lot. I've seen it a lot, and I've spoken to other people who've seen it much more than I have, is that women could be married to a man like this who's on paper a really good husband, and everybody, he looks great. Everything on paper says you're great, but they just hate him. They can't look at him. They feel they hate, and they can't, and they don't know what's wrong. They think there's something wrong with them because they're listening to their friends who've got these wacko husbands who are, abusive and stuff like this, yeah? And they're like, I've landed mamash a real catch. Why do I hate him so much? And I hear them speaking a little bit, and it becomes very clear that this man is striving to be a good husband. He hasn't transitioned to appreciating his wife. It's about me being a good husband. Do you understand the difference there? It's like a subtle difference, but it's not. It's an infinite difference. He's trying to be a good husband. So how does the Lemaisa in that situation, when he's trying to be a good husband, you could swap out. He needs a wife. Yeah, we can't be a good husband without a wife. But he doesn't need her. You could switch her out with any other woman, and it would be the same thing. So she's feeling abject aloneness because he's just trying to be a good husband. Kal v'chomer if he's just trying to get in, get into the bedroom or get whatever he wants, the other manipulative things that men try and get from their wives, yeah? Kal v'chomer. But even in that case, it's a little better because at least she'll feel validated in her emotions. In this situation, the poor woman doesn't know what's going on. She feels that she's corrupt because she feels completely alone, yeah? Like she doesn't exist in his world. I had a case of a guy who the woman came to my house and she she said, please don't think I'm crazy. And she started telling me about that she has she has these two voices in her head. Yeah? A very established Rebbetzin and Hashem himself. Yeah? And she's getting these messages from these two voices. Yeah? Hashem speaks to her mamash outright, and this big Rebbetzin. Yeah? And so, I listened to her, and she's a very put together woman, and she, she wasn't like cuckoo, and I'm going to get into all the details, but Lamaisa, I met her husband and spent some time with him, and she was she was in a very difficult position because he is a really choshev person, yeah, a really choshev man, yeah. And everyone loves him, and I'm not going to say what he does, but he's a very, very choshev person. And she was saying that she wants to get divorced, and she's this and that, and she knows that if she goes against him in court or anything, yeah, they will go with him because he's just such a gavaldik, put together person, yeah. And she didn't know. I'm just listening and talking. She couldn't really even pinpoint stuff. She said a few little things. I met with him, actually spent some time with him, and it's true. He appeared to be a really choshev person, but having spent some time with him, listening to him, how he was speaking and his relationship to Yiddishkeit and to schar and oynesh, I could see that he was really deeply narcissistic. But he was a clever guy, a very clever guy, so he knew how to be the kind of guy that you want to be with and love, etc. Yeah? And then I spoke to the girl Vita. I said, when did these two voices start coming to you? So, and I knew that her parents were nifta a few years earlier. And I said, Lamaisa, these voices started to appear once her mother and father both died. They both died within about a couple of years of each other. And by the time the second one had died, these two voices had become voices in her head. And she said to me that if it wasn't for these voices, she would have killed herself. Crazy, it's usually the voices that cause you to kill yourself. If it wasn't for these voices, she would have ended her life. What was it? It was Pasha. That she existed in this abusive marriage. It wasn't abusive physically, although maybe basically it wasn't abusive physically, yeah, but she was being deeply emotionally abused. But Kolzman, she had her parents around. She had someone to validate the fact that she was real. When her parents were gone, she had no one left to say that she was real. So she just invented these two voices in her head that were like validating voices, her father and her mother, in the film of this Rebbetzin and Hashem, male and female voice, that were there with her, telling her that she exists. Why does she need that? Because from her husband, she didn't exist. Because he was all about him on a very profound level. You with me? You understand? So that's really the danger of Yirsa Oynesh, especially if you're not having anybody telling you that we need to be striving for Lishma. If it's just Yirsa Oynesh, I've heard from so many people, Halavai, I'd have Yirsa Oynesh. That's the highest majority I can get to. I'm just doing it for whatever I'm doing it for. I don't know what else I used to do it for. But halavai, if we're not pushing ourselves, learning about what it means to serve Hashem Lishma, then I think according to the Tanya, there is definitely no haftacha. And according to the Mo'anaim, I didn't finish what I was going to say about the Mo'anaim, he said, mitoich lo lishma bo lishma is mitoich the lo lishma, from the fact that you hate the fact that you're serving Hashem lo lishma, you'll come to lishma. But it's not just if you're lo lishma, doesn't mean you're going to come to lishma. So that's the foundation of this chapter, is to tell the foundation of all these next 13 chapters, is that the lowest level of Yiras Hashem that we're going to talk about here is not Yiras Oynesh. That's something else. That's a different thing. Yeah, the lowest level of Yiras Hashem, which is the basis, the foundation for all of your avodas Hashem, is a consciousness of the fact that He exists. and that he's watching you. Even on the smallest, lowest level, and that's why Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his Talmidim that you should be zeicha to a year of Shemayim like you have a year of Basar V'Dam. And they said to him, Rebbe, what? You know, but that's what it means. Meaning that there's some. See, it's not about like even in the presence of a very young person, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. Yeah, where there's obviously no fear of consequences or punishment. Obviously, you're more self-contained. There are certain things you would do by yourself that you wouldn't do in front of a 3-year-old or even a 2-year-old. Yeah, there's a recognition of a consciousness that holds that makes you a little bit, what's the word, contained. Yeah, that's the foundation of all of Yiddishkeit. All of our avodah is predicated on the fact that you are aware that you are being watched, even on a tiny, weeny little level. Not that he's going to beat you up. Why'd you have to go there? It's not enough that he's just watching you. You have to now turn it into you again. Oh, he's watching you and he's going to beat you up. Why is it not enough that he's watching you? Like when you tell your kid, when you're sitting with a young kid and you're using your computer and they're next to you and they go to touch the keys and you're like, no, don't do that, don't touch that. And they stop, yeah? And then the minute you go off to the bathroom or something, there they are with the keys. Yeah, but Cole's mum, they're sitting right in front of you. They're not going to do that. I had a cute joke along these lines that there was a Chabad made a Shabbaton for a bunch of Hasidim. Yeah, it's a joke. And they went to a hotel and they had the whole Shabbos there. And when they left, the guy who owned the hotel came up to the guy running the group and said, "I've never been so impressed by a bunch of. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of people. Your guys were so well behaved and so well mannered, and I'm just kol hakavod." And so the guy said to them, the guy who's running the group, he said, "So the guys know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is everywhere, and he's watching everything. And if they step out of line, he's going to tell the Rebbe." That was the joke. That's like that's what we just said here, basically. Why do you need to say that Hashem's watching you and he'll punish you? Why do you need to go there? Maybe sometimes you do. Maybe there is the time and place for that. Yeah. If you believe in the punishment thing, which I don't know how many of us even believe in that anymore. Yeah. But why do you need to go that next step? It's not enough that he's watching. And if you don't believe, if you don't believe that he's watching you, but there's going to be a punishment, well then why would you believe that there's a punishment? It's a bit, the whole concept of fear of sin in this sense, yeah, not fear of sin, sorry, not at all, fear of punishment, there's some real difficult kind of philosophical issues here. Meaning, like, if you know that the creator of the world is watching you, why do you need to then go to the fact that he's going to beat you up?
Maybe.
Shouldn't there be some kind of self-containment just from, yeah?
Not necessarily punishment, but some kind of interaction, an active relationship as opposed to a passive just watching. Because if he's just watching, that's all there is to it, then...
That should be, again, what I'm saying, that should be enough if you're a normal person. If you're a normal person to know that this is forbidden, and the one who forbids you is aware of you right now. It's just, how can you do that?
If you believe in a living relationship and not just passive observation, then you expect that there's going to be some kind of reaction to your not necessarily punishment, not necessarily reward.
This is what we're trying to say. If you're just aware of the fact that it will hurt him, that's what we're talking about. That's gewaldig.
Yeah, okay.
The fact that we're having to say that he's upset and now he's going to give me a smack. Right. Why is it not enough just to upset him? That should be enough. Yeah. The problem is that because we're coming from this kind of more narcissistic way of seeing things, but we're not. That's the point. In our generation, we're all ready to ascend that, to understand it. So it's not. We don't have to go again. You can't not believe there isn't reward and punishment in this world. If you smoke, chances are you'll get punished with lung cancer. Yeah. If you're unpleasant to your wife, you'll get punished with a horrible marriage. Yeah. If you save money, there's a good chance you'll be rewarded by having some money left. Yeah, that's called reward and punishment. The world is very partial. Is it 100%? There's percentages, but if you put in the time and energy into your business and you plan it and you work it out and you know etc., there's a good chance you'll get rewarded with a good business if you do it with intelligence, etc. If you play the rules of the game, and if not, you just waste a lot of time and go into debt, etc. The world clearly works on reward and punishment on the most posh level. Yeah, eat bad foods, get fat and unhealthy. Yeah, work out, take care of your body. Generally, you'll feel healthy and with energy, etc. So the world's clearly built on reward and punishment. Call that consequences. But again, you have to move away from how important he is to how important you are when that becomes the motivating factor.
There are aspects to an active relationship that aren't necessarily reward and punishment. Let's say you talk to somebody and they smile, they laugh at a joke, whatever it might be. It's not necessarily reward or punishment.
Well, that is. And you could say, on that sense, you could say that making Hashem feel good is a reward, giving him nachas ruach is a reward. You could say that. We're talking about the self-centered kind of me receiving pleasure. It's not about him getting pleasure and me having pleasure from him getting pleasure, or me having tsar because he has tsar. It's more self-focused. That's the basic understanding of Yirsa Oynesh and Avascha. Yeah. So the first thing is the Rebbe basically, he doesn't even mention it. He just goes straight to this idea of the most foundational level, the basis of all avodas Hashem is that you are cognizant of the fact that you are being watched. There's an eye that sees, an ear that hears, and everything's been written down in a book. Just as a side point, because we're learning Pirkei Avos, why do you have to know that there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears? Why can't you just know there's an eye that sees or that there's an ear that hears? Why do you need both? You could read it like this, that your eye only sees chetzonius. The eye is also an external organ, you actually see it. Yeah, the eye sees chetzonius. You can look at somebody for years and not know who they are, what they're about, yeah? Hearing, you hear the pneumius. That's what you hear. Don't get me wrong, there's lots of milas of Ra'iyah over Shmiya, but it's a big sugya, but just on this level, Shmiya, you hear, you can even get into a real relationship with somebody over the telephone, no? In the old days, nowadays you see them, but in the old days, I had relationships with people over the telephone that I never saw until later on. I felt very close to them. Never saw them bichlal. But look at somebody for 10 years, no relationships built through that. So you see chetzonius, yeah, and you hear pneumius. So that's one of the ways of understanding this Mishnah, is there's an eye that sees. First things first is the Maisa Mitzvah, like we learned last week. The Maisa Mitzvah is Ika Ikarim. If you don't do the mitzvah according to how it's prescribed in Shulchan Aruch, yeah, according to the Tanoim of the mitzvah, if you put on tefillin on your leg, for example, yeah, there was no mitzvah took place. So the eye that sees is making sure, that's the idea of first things first, the Maisa Mitzvah has to be b'shleimus. Yeah, you can't cheat that. That's number one. Number two, there's an ear that hears. He's cognizant of the kavanah of the mitzvah. Why are you doing the mitzvah? Is he real to you? Is Hashem Yisbach Mamash real to you? And you realize that his mitzvahs are real to him, and therefore you're doing the mitzvahs because they're his mitzvahs, they're important to him, and therefore you're doing the mitzvahs. That's the ear that hears. And then you can say, Kol ma'asecha v'sefer nichtavim is not all of your actions, but the whole Maisa, the whole thing is written down in the book. You need, first things first is you need the actual Maisa Mitzvah, and second thing is you need the actual Kavanah of the Mitzvah, and the whole thing is remembered. The whole thing, and that goes for marriage so deeply, where just doing the Maisa is something, yeah, but just having the kavanah is nothing. If you just feel love towards your wife, it couldn't be real love if it doesn't come out in some kind of maisim. But if you just feel deeply for your wife, but that isn't expressed through machshav dibur maisa, yeah, that isn't a relationship. You understand? Relationships meet on the level of maisa. People meet on the level of maisa. Yeah, doing for your wife is ikka. But when then you might say, well, what about what I said before? If you're doing it for your own, you want to be a good husband, well, then you're not doing for your wife, you're doing for you. So that Maisa becomes your own Maisa. It's not about her. Whereas when you clean up the dishes in the sink, why? Because there's dirty dishes in the sink, and I know that my wife would like those dishes cleaned. I roll up my sleeves and I clean those dishes. We just connected on such a deep... That Maisa, I'm connecting with her deepest Ratzon. My Ratzon about the fact that I appreciate that she exists, and her Ratzon is that she wants the dishes cleaned. That's how do those two people meet? This is the crazy thing about this world, is when you start thinking in like the way of a chassid, which means lifnim mishus adin, let go of all the graphics. That Ratzon of the lady and that Ratzon of the husband, how do they meet? This is a Ratzon, that's a Ratzon. What do they do? How do they meet? Through that Maisa. Through that Maisa of you mamash getting... That's why it's called the Maisa Mitzvah, not washing the dishes, but the Maisa Mitzvah is called a Maisa Mitzvah. It's a Maisa. That's the meeting of the two, but that exists in all levels of doing anything from your wife. And like we said so many times, it's the way traditional marriage is set up. Is that you get to provide her with her life, yeah? If you don't give her money, she doesn't have a life. And she gets to provide you with life, because if you only have money, you can't do anything with money. So she can't do anything without money, and you can't do anything with money. Meaning money, what do you do with money? You can't eat it, you can't do anything with it. So you're supplying her deepest desire, which is to live, by giving her money. And she's providing for your deepest desire, which is to live, which is by turning that money into a home and food and warmth and v'chulei v'chulei. So the most traditional concept of marriage is that is how it works, through the maisim of the man earning money and through the maisim of the woman turning the money into life. That's how you're providing for her deepest desire to live, and she's providing for you for your deepest desire to live. That's marriage. That's what Avodas Hashem is. What's his deepest desire? It's Torah mitzvahs. Really, his deepest desire is a yichud with Shchintei. Yeah, Kudsha Baruch Hu Shchintei. His deepest desire is that there should be a yichud between his masculine aspect, whatever that means, and his feminine aspect, whatever that means. Yeah, who he is, mamash, and who he expresses himself to be. That's what female male is. He wants a yichud of those two things. How does that happen? That happens there's only one way in reality that I know of that takes place. Through Yidden doing Torah mitzvahs. How does that work? Yidden, Am Yisrael, Knesset Yisrael, really the makor of Yidden, that's called Shchintei. That's called the Shechina. Yeah? Hashem's presence in this world. See, the Ummos Ha'olam, yeah, some of them took one Yid and they turned him into an Elikus, yeah? Elikus, whatever. Yeah? They were near, like, they missed the point, yeah? They went that far off, meaning that their relationship to Am Yisrael, that's what Am Yisrael is. Am Yisrael is the Rebbeinu Shalom incarnate in this world. It might not look like that right now, but that's because we're in Gullus. But Am Yisrael is the Rebbeinu Shalom incarnate in this world. Not any single one of us, but the makor of Nishmas Yisrael, that's what's Shechina. That's why it's called Shechina. It means it's Sheichin, it's in this world. So that's Am Yisrael. That's Shechintei. Yeah? So what's mitzvahs? Kudsha Baruch Hu. Torah mitzvahs is the lowest point, so to speak, how they get expressed in Lamaisa, of him. That's his desire, that's his will. So now, when Am Yisrael do Torah mitzvahs, that's like the top of creation, yeah, that's called Shechina, and the bottom of Elokus, that's called Torah mitzvahs, merge with each other, and by that, we have all of creation merging now with all of Creator, so to speak. And that's really what he wants. So he wants his Torah and mitzvahs. The only way of doing that is through Torah and mitzvahs. When Am Yisrael do Torah and mitzvahs, we connect Hashem with his world. Yeah? We said it in a bit more higher resolution. We connect the creator, the lowest point of creator, with the highest point of creation. And as such, the whole thing merges together as one. That's his desire. So by us doing Torah and mitzvahs, we are zeicha to give him his life, so to speak. With me? That's marriage. That's why it's so important to understand that Hashem genuinely wants his mitzvahs. They're not just like busy work for us. They're not just, not just to keep us busy. He really cares about his mitzvahs. And that should be the motivation. And that's...
So what's the necessity of having so many different types of mitzvahs?
Say again?
What's the necessity of having so many different types of mitzvahs? I mean, aside from us getting
that's a really, really intelligent question. That's a really intelligent question.
We do every day,
yeah, so that was a machlokes Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Shmuel, when not a machlokes, I mean, it was a machlokes, but this idea, what you just said was what Rabbi Kiva was saying. Rabbi Shmuel was saying the opposite. What was the machlokes? Then the Gemara says that they were, when Hashem said, he called out the two basic categories of mitzvahs, which is aseh and lo saseh. Yeah? When Hashem said, you should do all the mitzvahs aseh, Rabbi Yishmael said, all the Yidden said yes. And then when Hashem said, don't do any of the lo saseh, all the Yidden said no. That's what Rabbi Yishmael said. What did Rabbi Kiva say? Rabbi Kiva said, when Hashem said to all the Yidden, you will do all the mitzvahs aseh, they said yes. And he said, and you will not do any lois asehs, and they said yes. Hein hein, hein loy. Meaning, your question is the most profound question of all questions. That should be guiding all of our bikush Ribbono Shel Olam. What is each of these separate mitzvahs? Obviously, tefillin is doing something different to tzedakah, is doing something different to mikveh, is doing something different to mezuzah. They're all doing different stuff, yeah? Shabbos, Chanukah, all the different mitzvahs, they're all doing different things, yeah? But if it's just about fulfilling his will, which is what Rabbi Akiva was saying, we said yes to the mitzvahs aseh and yes to the mitzvahs lo aseh. It doesn't matter. Lo ichpat li, I just want to be involved in your will. Rabbi Shmuel, who was more connected to this world, he said, no, there's differences there's differences in everything. Just like some, your wife wants it. It's really what everybody wants is pleasure. If you follow back everything you're doing, you always get back to the same point. Either pleasure or avoiding pain, the same thing. Why do you do anything? It might be a bunch of steps to get there, but eventually you'll realize that your entire life is being guided by your desire for pleasure. In a sense, that's really what you are. You are a point of pleasure. A single point of pleasure. All of this, that expresses itself now through Ratzon. We've spoken about this, yeah? That expresses itself through Ratzon, primarily, which is pleasure going out. That's longing. That then gets ordered through Seichel. That desire, really, we call it a desire to live. Yeah, that desire to live now gets ordered through mind, through Seichel. That gives birth to emotions, which expresses itself as behavior. So when you really want to get rid of all the graphics and all the complexity of this world and understand what you are, you're just a point of pleasure. That's what you are, a black point of pleasure. And the whole goal is to realize that that's actually, and that we're going to actually, it's really good that we said this because this is what we'll get to in a moment, Hashem, that now when we talk about you get pleasure from eating chocolate, yeah? Everyone gets pleasure from eating chocolate, Kimat, yeah? What about eating herring?
No.
Yeah? No. Yeah. So see, some people, my kids, like, that's, for them, that's Mama's Gan Eden. For my dad, that's like Gehenna. Yeah? Like, that. So what happened there? How come some people like herring, some people like chocolate? I had this kid come to my house one time for Shabbos. big fat Hasidic kid, yeah? He was probably 14, 15, 16, yeah? So we did the right thing, yeah? We put out a big plate of cakes and biscuits and chocolates and whatever, and candies, yeah? On the table in the room that he was staying in. And when he left, I came out and I was absolutely shocked to see that it hadn't been touched. This big fat kid, nothing wasn't touched, bichlal. And that was completely bizarre. And then when I was cleaning up the room, I saw underneath his bed was one of these, like exactly like that thing there, yeah? Just with some oil and like a little bit of herring left and like some cracker wrappers. Oh wow, that's crazy. Kid doesn't like sweets and chocolates, and he loves herring. Yeah, that's what. Anyway, what accounts for that? So this is a very important thing to know. Is that we're not when we talk about getting pleasure, we say that the way we speak is we say the chocolate gives me pleasure. Yeah, the much more accurate way of saying it, although it's not absolutely accurate, but much more accurate way of saying it is chocolate touches my pleasure. There's pleasure. And chocolate touches that. There's no pleasure in chocolate, but it somehow goes through the mouth, goes into the mouth, and it does whatever it does, and it produces whatever chemicals it produces, and it eventually basically finds its way up through. It goes through my mind, yeah, and it actually activates my pleasure, and I go, yum, yeah. Whereas if my dad eats herring, it doesn't go up there at all. And he's like, ugh, that's disgusting. Yeah? Like me, I don't really care. So I know my dad has a big aversion to herring. I'm fine with it. It's not such a big deal to me. So now what accounts for that? How comes chocolate is able to go up through the entire system and touch my pleasure and herring can't? And by the other guy, it's the opposite. That's because of your nature nurture. That's part of the system. So some people run after money, yeah? Some people run after Torah knowledge, like Lahavdil, but it could be actually not Lahavdil. It could be the same kind of thing. Some people run after, they don't want Torah knowledge for the sake of Torah knowledge, they want Torah knowledge for the sake of covered. If that's the case, it's just the same as running after money, maybe. What accounts for that? That's to do with how the guy's mind is working, how the guy's heart has been conditioned from his mind. That's all to do with nature nurture. So you're always looking. Everyone wants the same thing. It's just they've been conditioned in different ways, which means getting to that same thing is going to look different by different people. But you're always trying to get back to pleasure. That's the whole point. So now, what was it you asked again? Yeah. So now that accounts for why there's 613 mitzvahs. Just like you don't just do one thing, do you? You do all kinds of things.
But then it's for us.
What? It's just a mushal, perfect mushal. It's a perfect mushal.
Half this planet to be in being, but I'm saying you just gave purpose to all these things around us to be in existence, but it's essentially nonsense.
No, but wait, no.
The
fact is that you want one thing,
right?
But you act in a very multifaceted way. You go to the gym, you eat nice foods, you go on holiday, yeah, you buy yourself a nice car, yeah, you like to give over and teach, whatever things you do, yeah? All of those things are an expression of that single point of pleasure. You understand? When it goes through the system of creation, it's like it's mamish, exactly like this. It's like a light beam going through a prism and it explodes. There's only just one light, white light, but as it hits the prism, it explodes into 16 million colours, yeah? That they were all contained in that one white light. Now, what you're saying, this is the difference between, this is where the moshel breaks down, is by us, all of our different behaviours are a reaction to stuff. Our mind, our conditioning, our physiology, the world around us, etc., yeah? So, like, I'm building my business, yeah? And the guy in the depths of the Congo is chasing after the monkey. Yeah, we're doing the same thing. We're both trying to touch our pleasure point. Yeah, but it looks very different. why is he doing that and why doing this? Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I got born in the Western world. I live in Israel in a first world country, etc. Yeah, and it's what I do. He was born in the depths of Africa. He's living in a third world country without any education, whatever, and he's doing what he does. So we are responding. All of our different actions are a response to the world around us. Yeah, by Hashem, it's the opposite. His different actions, so to speak, create the world. So really what you're seeing with the 613 mitzvahs is Hashem's personality being described. That's what creation is. You hear how that's opposite?
No.
You got that? You got that? I'll say again. Okay, this is a very important point. That the way I behave is a response to a bunch of different stuff. My parents, my nature nurture. The way I behave is a response to my nature nurture. Yeah? The way Hashem behaves, so to speak, is a response to his nature nurture. Again, hold me to understand this. Meaning, I have a certain kind of nature, yeah, and nurture, and as I go out into the world and I experience all the diversity of this world, I will be acting in different ways. When I go to the gym, I'll be doing something different than when I go to the swimming pool, than when I go skiing, when I am sitting at my Shabbos table. I'll be doing different things and all those things. That is a response to the situation that I'm in, and also to my physical, to who I am. This world, it doesn't work like that. It's not like Hashem is responding to the world. It's who Hashem is, projects out into this world. His personality, what's a code word for Hashem's personality?
Torah.
Huh?
Torah.
That is, yeah, who said that? Sorry, you said that? Yeah, you're right. That's mamash. That's really good. I wasn't thinking that, but that's absolutely true. The way I understand it.
Mitzvahs.
That's Torah mitzvahs, is the spheres. The spheres are his personality. Are they him? He has a personality, just like we have a personality. It's not you. You're not your personality. Yeah, your personality can change. His personality doesn't change, because his personality is an accurate reflection of himself. Yeah, unless he's in Gullus, which he is right now. So the world doesn't look like a representation of him. That's what Gullus is, when there's a disconnect between the person and the behaviour. That's a side point. So now, my behaviour is a response to all the stuff that's going on around us. The world is a response, so to speak, or an articulation of him. So there's 10 spheres, which is the Sersa Dibrus, yeah, which breaks down, it fragments out into 613 mitzvahs. I think, was it the Ramban? Or the Smag? I can't remember. One of the Rishonim, I think it was the Ramban HaKodesh. He showed how the 613 mitzvahs all connect back to one of the 10 commandments. And the Zohar Kodesh says that all of the 10 commandments are mushrash in the first 2 commandments. Anochi Hashem lo yelecha. And the Zohar Kodesh goes further and says that both the mitzvahs, they're mushrash in Anochi Hashem. That's him himself. So from his oneness, that's the bright white light, yeah? That oneness diffracts into 2. Yeah, that's called mitzvahs lo saseh and aseh. That's the most, and that's just, he likes it, he doesn't like it. That's avrinyur, that's just chesed gevur on that level. That comes down to, however you want to break it down, yeah? That's just, he likes it, he doesn't like it. That's still a very vague, general thing. But now that splits off and like fragments out into 613 different looking wills. And then one second. The final point is those 613 mitzvahs now need to be expressed so the world comes into being. So it's not like we do tefillin because there's cows and there's ink and there's grass and sun. It's the reason why there's cows and ink and grass and sun is because there's the mitzvah of tefillin, and the mitzvah of tefillin needs that there's cows and inks and grass. So what you're seeing, this world is a response to him, so to speak. Whereas when we're acting, you're seeing us in response to the world. Is that clear? And that's what Rabbi Akiva was saying, because he was so connected to the fifth level. That's, by the way, at the Yom Suf, why he said in the Haggadah that there was 5. This is the Machlokes with, who is it? Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shmuel. No, it was Rabbi Shmuel. Who was it? Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer? What? If it was one, 4 or 5 plagues at the sea.
In one.
I can't remember. It was 50, 200, 250. I know Rabbi Akiva said 250. Yeah, he was connected to the highest, deepest level. That's number 5. Yeah, his whole life was. What about Rishon? Rabbi Shimon is a different. That's a different. He's got the whole thing.
Gemara today where the guy talked to the river. He made him split the river. I don't know I forgot the Rav's name, but and he talked to the mountain. He wanted to split something, so he made a mountain to split between him and somebody else. So that's a high level to become to that level, no?
Don't know.
Yeah. I was thinking of yin and yang and Avdil Abdullah, what you were saying back in when, no? In the Goyish world, what's the opposite? The light and day and night, right and left.
What's the opposite? What do you mean?
I'm saying what you were saying, like God's thing is he's putting stuff here for the world, and we use the stuff for our pleasure. His pleasure is creating the world.
His pleasure is a yichud of Kudsha Baruch Shchintei. That's the one thing we know about Hashem, basically. That what he wants is a yichud of himself and his Shechina, whatever that means. Yeah, that really, in a code way of understanding, that means the highest point of creation and the lowest point of himself, which means just a yichud from the highest to the lowest, from the lowest to the highest. That's what he wants. He wants yichud. He wants the whole thing one. Yeah, just like. See, but that doesn't need to look like a singularity. The most beautiful way of seeing it is look at a big company that's really put together. Yeah, like Amazon. Yeah, Amazon is one of the most successful companies in the world. But look at it, study the structure of it. Would you say is it an accurate thing to say? An accurate statement? Amazon is one. Is that an accurate statement?
It's components of many different places. They come to one.
Is Amazon one? Accurate statement or not?
No.
You just don't know.
It's the video.
What?
It's components of many different parts that merges into one acting company.
So are you one?
Oh. Better question. And so the answer is the same, but the end result is the same. I'm components of many different parts, and at the end of the day, I'm one individual that comes out.
So you're one.
Right.
But then you realise that you're one of many when it comes to society. Right. You're an organism, yeah? If you want to look at it on a biological level, what's the difference between an organism and an organisation? What's the difference? Would you call an ant nest, yeah, is called... Well, if you actually learn up in biology books, they refer to it as a single organism. But it's really an organisation, isn't it? What's the difference between an organisation and an organism?
So it can't be split?
It's just kind of. It's just how tightly packed is it? See, an ant nest is made of a bunch of... Primarily, you've got nurses, you've got the queen ant, yeah? You've got nurses, you've got foragers, you've got builders, and you've got warriors. Yeah, but it's more complicated than that, but just on a Pashat level, yeah? Yeah? You've got these 5 madrigas of ants. Not one of them can make it by themselves. The queen's got... That's not to talk about that. The nurses, well, if there's not food and a place to live and people protecting them, ants protecting them, they're gone. Yeah? The foragers... Well, if they don't have the nurses rearing them and the warriors protecting them and the builders providing a home for them, they're gone. None of them can survive by themselves. So they exist in an interdependent organization. You need all of them together, yeah? That's just like you. You're made of a bunch of cells or a bunch of organs, depending on how granular you want to get. And it all works together, and not one cell can make it by himself. So when you look at an actual ant, you know when you see that line of ants, going through your kitchen that makes you cringe, you know what I'm talking about? Really what you're seeing, conceptually, is a tentacle of what's called the ant colony, whatever you want to call it. Not one of those ants could live by itself for very long at all. So when you're seeing that line of ants, you're seeing a tentacle reaching out from its shoresh and getting some food and bringing it back to itself. What's the difference between that and look, I'm just going to do that now with this. I just brought that back to me. What's the difference? Conceptually, there's absolutely no difference whatsoever. The difference is this is much more tightly packed. With me? It's more like the way you said it. It can't be divided. It can't be split up. There's no, you understand? That's the difference in an organisation and an organism. Really, there's no difference. So when we look at it on that sense, Amazon is completely one. It's just made up of a bunch of different parts. Kol Zman, none of them have their own agenda. All you've got is Amazon. You know what I'm saying? The minute one of those people who work for Amazon or one of those machines that is used by Amazon develops its own agenda, now you've not got one. You've got Amazon and you've got Gary. Yeah? Let's say. So if someone's name's Gary. Yeah? What's that in the organism? What would that be called in an organism?
Cancer.
Yeah, that's cancer. When one cell develops its own personal agenda, yeah, and that's the difference between a benign cancer and a malign cancer. Is one guy in the coffee room can, like, let's say you're running a music business, yeah. I've got a friend in LA who has a big music business. He has all these people making music for adverts and stuff like that, yeah. And a lot of the guys there just love music, and they are so over the moon that they can get paid for making music. So they're working day and night, giving everything they've got, yeah? Why? Because they love music. They love my friend. No. That's in a sense called a malign cancer. So a benign cancer, which we have lots of stuff, meaning the cell has its own agenda, but Baruch Hashem, it just happens to be in line with the agenda of the organism. So it's not doing any damage. But that's just kind of luck in a sense. Do you with me? Yeah. That's how it went down. The minute that cell actually develops an agenda that starts damaging the organism, that's called a malign. That's what we refer to when we talk about cancer. We don't even refer to the other thing as cancer. That's not relevant to us because it just doesn't make such a difference. So now, Kol Zman, all those pieces are completely connected, completely aligned with the agenda of Amazon. You have one. Conceptually, there's just one. That guy in the mailroom who's driving the white Amazon truck to you, yeah, and he hands you the useless USB thing that you bought again, yeah. He's really conceptually just an extension of Jeff Bezos. He's an extension of Jeff Bezos. That's all he is. Just like the ant colony. Jeff Bezos couldn't do it himself. He'd be imagine having run around delivering packages all over the world. 100,000 packages an hour all over the world. He'd be much exhausted. So he can't do it. But that it's all one point. It's all one thing. That's what creation is. It's Ratzon Hashem that is being expressed. So it's not being expressed through creation. It's expressing itself as creation. It's the opposite of us. We respond to the world, so we have a multifaceted life. The world is a response to him, and therefore the world is multifaceted, and therefore the mitzvahs are also multifaceted. So the answer to your question, the way I understand it, is that the foundation of everything there's one mitzvah. That's what Habakkuk said, yeah? Tzadik ben Manasseh Yechia. He was Omed Kulan al Achas. One mitzvah. That's what Rabbi Akiva was completely kashur to. But there's also all of these other mitzvahs that are more individual expressions of Hashem on a lower level. There's his ratzon, so to speak, his singular ratzon, yeah? But then there's the ratzon for tefillin and all the tikkunim that tefillin do and all that kind of stuff, yeah? So we have to live in this, and that is exactly, it's so nice that you said that because it really brings us to the point of the chapter, is that is the foundation of your avodas Hashem. Recognizing that Hashem is. What is he? Didn't get that far yet. He is. That's the foundation. That's called Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemayim. He is, and I am a response to that, yeah? Not even, it doesn't even have to go that far, but he is. And that is the foundation of all of your Avodas Hashem. So that's Yira. That means all of Avodas Hashem, and this is not a popular thing to say until I explain it in our generation, all of Avodas Hashem is based on fear. But not fear like I'm scared of you. Yira as in recognition of you. You with me? So how do you know that you're in a real relationship with your wife if you're married? Is it from the flowers that you buy her? Or is it because you're able to turn off the mazgan when she's too cold? Which one is a greater gilui of the fact that your wife is real to you?
Turn off the mazgan.
Vadai. It's geschmack to buy people flowers. It's geschmack to buy stuff for people, yeah? Or it can be at least, yeah? But to you're hot, she's cold, as is it's always like that, yeah? Yeah? It's always like that? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're hot.
But I got 2 bars of chocolate this morning. So.
That's brownie boy, but I'm telling you that it's not. This is. It's actually that what you said there. This is the thing: is if you're doing all these nice things for your wife, now a narcissist who's with his wife will not be able to turn off the mazgam for her because she's not really real to him. Like, let me answer. I'll say. It says in the Mishnah, the Rasha, yeah, there's the four madregas with tzedakah. The Chassid says, "I want to give and I want you to give." Yeah. The Benoni says, "Wait 1 minute." The Rasha says, "I don't want to give and I don't want you to give." What are the two in the middle bits? I can't remember. Either way, why would a Rasha say, "I don't want to give and I don't want you to give"? There was Ayin Ra, which was I don't want to give, but I want you to give, or I want to give, but I don't want you to give. That was an either way. Why was a Rasha not want either of you to give? What's the definition of a Rasha?
Nobody benefits. The end user doesn't. There's no end user benefiting from this conversation.
The ultimate level of Rasha is a person who doesn't believe that anyone else exists. Mm-hmm. That is paroi. Ani v'afsi oid. There's just me. He is the paradigm of Russia. No one else exists. There's just me. Ani v'afsi oid. What did Moshe say? He said, "Einod milvadoi." Yeah, all there is God. That's the ultimate level of tzaddik. Yeah. So the ultimate level of Russia is a person who will cause you pain for his pleasure. That is what a Russia is, and we all know that. The whole world knows that. And when you get a Russia and a narcissist and a psychopath and a sadist, yeah, which means he's getting pleasure from hurting people, then you end up with Rishoyim like Ted Bundy, like serial killers who you can't even fathom. Meaning they're just Rishoyim, but somehow they developed a pleasure for hurting people. Yeah, meaning. What's the difference between Ted Bundy and a real narcissist psychopath in a relationship who doesn't hurt anyone? It's just that if he wanted to hurt somebody, he would. He just didn't get that time. He never had that taiva open up to him. So really on a conceptual level, there's no real difference. On a law, on a din level, there's an ultimate difference. But on a conceptual level, if this person isn't real to you, and you're manipulating them and you use them for your own will, but you wouldn't hurt them because that's not something you enjoy, yeah? what's the difference between you and the other guy who does enjoy hurting people?
One step.
It's not really much difference at all.
One step.
It's just it's not even a step. It's just the fact that you lucked out in that. If you listen to Ted Bundy speak, it's crazy. I was so what was the word? So fascinated by that man. He was the worst. He was like the worst man that ever existed in my mind. Ooh. Yeah,
Ted Bundy.
He was a serial killer in the 80s, 90s. Yeah, he was mamash, Russia, Marusha, ain't Kamoy, mamash. And if I watched some interviews with him, I wouldn't look at it nowadays. I wouldn't be able to look at it. I think I watched some interviews with him, and he spoke about how something happened where he was in this relationship with somebody, and he had drunk too much, and he hit her or something, punched or something, and that was it. From there on, it was just downhill. He got this taste for blood and hurting, or whatever, and then it turned into who he was. Yeah. So if he never had that one unlucky situation with that woman and the extra drink and exactly the situation, maybe Ted Bundy would never have come into the world. He would have just been this really manipulative, horrible person who made everybody feel creepy and alone when he was with them, as opposed to what he did, becoming a torturing,
That's a hurt person. No, he got hurt. But his personality, another person would get over it. His personality is like, let's develop it.
No, but what we're trying to say here is the fact that he became someone who physically hurt people, like tortured them, was to do with like stuff that happened to him.
Right.
So okay, I don't want to get too much, but that's the point. So now, if that's the definition of Russia, I will hurt you for my pleasure because you don't exist. What's the definition of a tzaddik? Is I would never dream of doing you any harm for my pleasure. I would never ever. You're so real to me. How could I ever hurt you in any way or use you in any way, shape or form? You with me? That's a tzaddik. So now, wait, we went off in chat. What were we trying to get back to? Yeah. So now, the ultimate revelation of the fact that you're serving God is the fact that you will contain yourself for him. Not that you'll do stuff for him, but because there could be inherent pleasure in doing things. There could be inherent pleasure in mitzvahs aseh, yeah? But in a mitzvahs lois aseh, what pleasure do you get from not eating basar v'chalav? What pleasure do you get from not... Again, you can search for things and you can touch it up that it is pleasurable and whatever, yeah? But Lamaisa, what's the difference between you and Charlie Kirk keeping Shabbos? He used to keep Shabbos in his way, yeah? It's a good idea to get rid of your telephone for a day. That really makes sense. In our generation, that's a big pleasure. But you could do that without having a chiyuv to keep Shabbos, couldn't you? Just put your phone away. What's the benefit of having to put your phone away? You understand what I'm saying? The meaning you could do it. So that's the foundation of all of Yiddishkeit. What is that really, Lamaisa? The foundation of that in more spoken out terms is Hashem, you exist. You're real. And that will be most obviously expressed by the fact when he says, don't eat basar v'chalav, and I'm on a 15-hour flight to LA and I forgot to order kosher, and they're eating basar v'chalav, and you say, do you have a kosher meal? And they say, no, but here we have some, here you can eat what they're eating. And you look at it and you're like, no, you can't eat that. That is a deep revelation of your recognition of the fact that the Rabbanu Shalom exists. And that is the foundation of all of Yiddishkeit. And that's why Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai said to his Talmidim, you should be so. They said to him, give us a bracha before he was dying. He said, you should have Yiras Shemayim as you have from Basar V'Dam. And they said back to him, but what's that? I want to have Yiras Shemayim, the Chvod V'Atzmai. He was like, no, you don't understand. This is where it all begins. You with me? That's called Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemayim. That is the foundation of all of our avodas Hashem. That is what the Rebbe here calls Yiras Chet or Yira Tatar. Yeah. So now there's another Yira called Yira Ilah or Yiras Boishus. Now Yira Tatar, this lower fear, which again, it's not like it's not to do with the fear of punishment. That's very important. That's why I spent so long at the beginning of the shit explaining that. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the years of Oynesh. It's to do with recognition of the fact that he's real. And the more real he is to you, the less real you are to yourself. So we described the ultimate level of a tzaddik says, I wouldn't put you out, chas v'shalom, in any way, shape or form for my own personal pleasure. Because really, remember what we said, how you really are a point of pleasure, which means also he is a point of pleasure and she is a point of pleasure. That's all you are. So my ultimate recognition of you is by your pleasure. Yeah? So if I won't put my pleasure over your pleasure, that's a revelation of a very put together guy, a tzaddik. The ultimate expression of tzaddik is a man or woman who wouldn't put themselves out for their own pleasure. Meaning their own pleasure has become, there is a Matthias where their pleasure actually merges with his pleasure, his barach. That's a tzaddik gamor, that's a different level what we're talking about here. But the tzaddik she'ena gamor, the regular tzaddik who we do come across maybe sometimes, their sense of pleasure has become so irrelevant to them that, for example, if he's sitting in this chair, yeah, and this was a more comfortable chair, and it wouldn't benefit him in any way in his avodas Hashem, sitting in the more comfortable chair than the less comfortable chair, he would not be matriach himself to get up and sit into the more comfortable chair. You understand what I'm saying? If this chair had some kind of benefit in his avodas Hashem, he would get up and sit in that chair because he's benefiting God. If it's just about my pleasure and there's nothing else comes from that, that's completely irrelevant to me.
You should not be real to yourself.
What? No, it means you become ultimately real. So now let's get to the point here. And this is where we understand US boishus, which they call fear of embarrassment. So what's that? So fear of embarrassment, we understand it, is, and I think there's two ways to understand it, but the way I'm going to explain now, the way I understand it. Who was the first person to get embarrassed?
Adam.
Adam Arisha, yeah? Mm-hmm. Why was he embarrassed?
Hashem asked him to see something.
It says he saw his nakedness, yeah? He was naked, yeah? Oh, and so he covered himself with a fig leaf. Yeah? The Or Chaim is much better. I know this is true. I saw it with my own eyes in the Sefer. The Or Chaim says it when you understand it, but the reason why I know it's true is because I asked my Rav Haas, and he said this is Pshat on the Or Chaim. You'll see if you look in the Or Chaim, once I explain it, you'll see it, but you don't see it from the Or Chaim. But I did see it somewhere mamash. Anyway, so the Adam Rishon wasn't embarrassed because he was standing there naked. He was embarrassed b'shas Maisa with Chava that for the first time he experienced his own personal pleasure. That was taka embarrassing. Not that he was naked, that he, for the first time, experienced his own independent sense of pleasure. Before Chet Eitz Adas, yeah, him with Chava it was just Hashem. There was just Hashem. Once he had separated himself from Hashem, Derech HaNachash, yeah, by way of the Chet, what was that revealed as? That was revealed as him having his own independent sense of pleasure. That's embarrassing. Why? Because remember we said this world is a complete outgrowth and expression of the Ribono Shel Olam, the singularity of what Hashem really is, and that refracts through all the different spheres and the different lights, and before you know, you've got a whole world of endless multiplicity, yeah? What would you call that ultimate light at the top? You would call that you would call that oineg. That's what Hashem is, just like we are essentially a point of oineg. To say that Hashem is essentially a point of oineg is not right, but it's the best thing we can probably say. Yeah? It's the most accurate thing we're able to say. He's a point of oineg. Now let's lahavdil elef alfa lafim havdalas. Let's go back to Jeff Bezos. Yeah. So in our moshel, he's the one showing lahavdil. He's a point of oineg. Yeah. Kolzman, all the 200,000 people who work for him and all the machines and everything down all the madrigas and levels. Yeah. Are more cognizant of his oineg than their own oineg. That means they don't have their own agenda. Yeah? They are meyucha to his oineg. You've got a oneness. The minute one of them develops his own independent sense of oineg, he has his own pleasure, he has his own thing, yeah? That's like a black spot in that company that we call Amazon. You with me?
Yeah.
And that's why Adam is
the independent oneg of each individual is the connection that makes them, part of his oneg.
So there's lots of madrigas of how disconnected that oneg can get, where it gets to the point where the lowest level, which could be in Amazon, is a guy whose oneg is to damage Amazon. He's constantly doing things to try and hurt Jeff. Yeah? That's called Lakanta. That's the lower. That's not even, we don't even discuss that in Tanya. Then you've got the next guy who he knows that if he mamash plays the game of Amazon, remember we spoke about this last week? Yeah? That's called Leo's Talmud Hochem. If I play the game, if I keep Jeff happy, it's going to be good for me. I'm going to be wealthy, etc. Yeah? Then you got the next guy who he's not thinking about himself. He's just, well, what do you do? I work at Amazon. Why? I've been there like 15 years. That's what I do. That's Mrs. Anashim Lamada. And then you've got the next guy who's like, yeah, I really care about this guy. Yeah. And then you've got the next guy whose mum was completely cuckoo over Jeff. Yeah. That's the next level up. Yeah. And then you've got the next guy who doesn't even know that he's there. All there is Jeff.
The motivation is the money. The reward, the motivation there, no?
Those are the lower levels, but then when you get to the middle point where there's no real motivation. Why are you working at Amazon? I don't know. That's why I work. That's mitzvahs and national lamata. That's why most, ask the average guy, why are you davening shachris? Yeah, and he won't talk to you about, there's mitzvahs kriya shema. What do you mean davening? So it's 7:30. You daven shachris, no? I'm gonna get that's mitzvah. Well, and it goes up and up. So now, when that point of pleasure in the structure of Amazon, if this guy's got his own agenda, he has become like a black spot in this infinitely white light. You with me? That's what Adam experienced, and that's embarrassing. Why? And I love the moshe I always give. Yeah, is a guy wearing all white. Yeah, white hat down to white shoes, completely white. Yeah, and he's got a spaghetti stain right here. Yeah, a bright red spot of spaghetti, yeah? Exactly, yeah? How do you think the stain feels?
Embarrassed.
He's looking around thinking, that's called embarrassment. That's why it's called Yiras Oynesh. That's why it's called Yiras Boishas. Fear of embarrassment. It's not that it's different to recognizing Hashem. It's now you recognize yourself. And because Hashem has become so profoundly real to you, you feel a little bit embarrassed about the fact that I'm still here. What am I doing having my own independent sense of pleasure in this infinity called God, who's one? That's called Yiras Aboishus. That's Yir Elah. That's the higher level of Yir, where he is now embarrassed of the fact that he is independent from God. He doesn't pay any attention to that aspect of himself. The guy's completely in line with Torah mitzvahs, yeah? He never steps out of line. But he has an independent sense of self, and that is a little bit embarrassing. Or it could be depending on how small that sense of self is, you understand? If that sense of self is tiny, and you're so aware of the Rabboni Shalom, well, then that sense of embarrassment will be much greater. Whereas if the Rabboni Shalom is a little bit smaller because you're a little bit bigger, then you're not that embarrassed. You understand? So that's what we started getting into chapter 42 as well, actually. But that's the way that the Tanya lays out, the way I understand it, that I learned through my Rebbe, the way the Tanya lays out Avodas Hashem. The first aspect, said a lot of words, yeah, but it's very simple. The foundation of all avodas Hashem is that you appreciate that He exists. Not that you're going to get in trouble, but that He exists. That's the foundation of all avodas Hashem. That's called that's the lowest level of yiras. It's called yiras chet, yira chitzonius, yira tatar, the lower yira, because it's about I'm reality and I'm looking outward to the world, and then I see Hashem. There's me and Hashem. Yeah, Yira Ilah or Yira Boishes is there's Hashem and me. It's who is Ikka, who's more primary.
Why did Hashem give us the taivas like Adam Rishon? How about his wife?
That's a different. That is Bechira. That's the answer to the question, Bechira. But that's a big. And I don't. To be honest, I don't really know the answer to the question. But
I'm just after, because if He wants us to do all those things and we're one with Him.
Yeah, but He wants us to do it. He wants it to do just like. You ever saw that film? Sorry to bring this up, but it just sticks in my head. You ever saw that film?
Matrix.
No. Coming to America with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, of course.
You remember that film?
Yeah.
So there's a scene. This has been Makadish right now. Eddie Murphy just goes right up into the Seagus at this point, maybe. There's that scene where they're trying to fight. Could be who knows? The whole reason why he came to the world is just for this moment. Right, who knows?
Right now.
The Rambam might say that for sure. That there's a scene in that film where they're trying to hook him up with his wife. Yeah. You remember?
Yeah.
And the first woman they bring,
the queen.
the first one they bring, she had been groomed from his earliest. So he's like, wait, she just does anything I ask? He's like, stand on one leg. I can't remember what he said to her.
Yeah.
I remember he did say, bark like a dog.
Right.
And she starts barking.
Right.
And he's like, get her away from me, man. Leave me alone. Maybe that's an answer to the question. Maybe that's the answer to the question.
He didn't want somebody so.
He didn't want her. He didn't want him. He wanted her. He wanted somebody else.
24/7.
He wanted. I don't know. We had to choose it. Maybe that's the answer. I never said that. I should have said that. That's,
No, it's a great example.
yeah, no, it is like that. So I said maybe that was the whole reason why I came to. Oh. Anyway, but so the foundation is. Let's just quickly summarize and then we'll go. The foundation is that He exists, which is not Yiras Oinesh or Avascha, because Lav Dafka He exists. Yeah, He's just the machine. You're going to get He's going to dole out the punishment, but it's about the punishment. So the first level is He exists. That's called Kabbalah's Oil Malchus Shemaim. That's the foundation of all of everything for a Yid. Yeah, that He is real, and He's more real than you, and you are. He's not really more real than you. That's the lowest level. He exists, not even as a king of flesh and blood. He just exists as another mensch who you're cognizant of, and therefore you behave yourself. Now that yira, that's the lowest level of the lowest yira. As it goes up and up and up, eventually he stops just being like another guy, and he starts to become like a choshev guy, and then he starts to become a really choshev guy. Then he starts to become like a king. Then he starts to become an all-powerful king, and then. Do you understand? It's a little different. You'd act a little bit differently if there was a video camera there and you knew that your son Shmuel, was someplace else watching us, as opposed to knowing that Donald Trump is sitting there watching us. That's madregas of the lower fear. Who is God to you? Is He just another guy? Yeah, which for some people that is not much more than that. Or is He mamash the melech malchei hamelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is like another guy plus. You with me? Like Lemaisa, Donald Trump's another guy, yeah? But you'd be acting in a whole different way. I would be acting in a whole different way. If I knew that Donald Trump was watching our shir right now, I would be very different to probably how I've been, let's say. Especially if I knew someone lesser. Those are the madregas of lower fear. And then at one point it flicks. And again, I'm just making numbers up, but at one point it gets to 50-50. Yeah? There's 50% me. At the very lower level, there's like I'm 99% and he's 1%. Yeah? But he's there and that's enough to contain me. And you go up and up and up and up and up. And then there's a point where you hit the 50-50 mark, and then you move over that, and now he becomes 51%, you come 49%. Now you're moving into Yira Ilah. Yeah, at least there's two ways to understand it. Where I'm explaining. You're moving into Yira Ilah, and as that goes higher and higher and higher, he stops being a king of flesh and blood, a king, an almighty king, he starts to become reality itself. And you are now a point in that reality, and that starts to get embarrassing, more and more embarrassing, until the highest point where you are now 1%, he's 99%, and that is the highest level of you as boishus. You could go past that level, which would be like Rabbi Shimon, where you stop. There's no you now, or Moshe, or
So the oneg that Adam had after the chet, even though he had oneg beforehand, but he was embarrassed that he had oneg.
He didn't have oneg beforehand. Hashem had oneg beforehand. There was nothing.
He was with Hashem, but wasn't there an oneg over there?
It was oneg. It was Hashem's oneg, meaning he wasn't. He was completely
nothing at all.
That's why the Yates had to come from outside of him.
He had no oneg.
What?
How did he do that?
Hashem worked it out. He sent the nachash, something outside of him.
DNA.
He sent something outside of him to get to create this point. And this is the point. And this is a big Torah from the Rayats, from the Rebbe of the Babich Rebbe, who joshes that whole Sipor in a peladic way, mamash peladic way, that it was completely Ratzon Hashem. The Ramchal says something a little bit like it as well, but the way the Rayat says it is out of control. Yeah. Hashem orchestrated it in such a way because he wanted that chait to happen 100%. He like in a sense, he needed it to happen. Like you can say that, but he really, really wanted it to happen because that would be the yichud of the highest point with the lowest point. But he had to do it in a way, says the way out, so I understand it, according to my Rebbe, that Chava had to choose. Because that lowest level is called Mavis. That lowest level is called death. And he couldn't just put... He's too nice for that. Hashem's too kind to have put us in this position without us having chose it. And this is such an important point. You could whinge and whine about your... Did you say your parents did they have any control over your life?
Different points.
I mean, not now. Obviously.
Growing up, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
They make your parents make massive decisions for you.
Right.
Huge decisions you have to make for your children.
What creates you? That's what creates you.
Yeah, and we're making decisions. What
like
school do I send my child to?
49 to 50%, like you said.
But more, you're deciding for your children. That is a power that Hashem handed over to the parents. Parents can decide what they're going to put their kids through. And that's their prerogative. And that's what Chava decided. Chava decided she made a cheshbon, and she realized that for us to go into the Olam HaMaves and to be masak in that world, even though it's going to be so painful and so terrible, and there's going to be so much tsaras v'chule, yeah? She made a cheshbon, a very intelligent cheshbon, and the right cheshbon, that it was worth it. And so she decided for us and for herself, and then for us, consequently, that we are going to take on this mission of being masak in the inyan of Maves. And that's called Tchias Amesim. That's why the ultimate final level is Tchias Amesim. Bringing Chias into the Misa. And that was what Chava chose and made Adam do what he did. And therefore the whole thing, and we're still here, we're wiping up the mess. But it's not just that there was a mess and we're going to go back to Gan Eden. We're wiping up a mess and we're going to go back to a place much higher infinitely higher than Gan Eden. Back to him himself, that was her cheshbon. Okay, it's going to take 5,786 years, yeah? It's going to happen very soon, B'ezrat Hashem, but it's worth it, it's Kedai. All the suffering of all the billions and billions of people, not just the Yidden, all the people in the whole world, and all the animals and everything, all the suffering of the whole world is worth it for where we're going to get to, which is called Tchias Amesim, which is us bringing Chias into the Maves, which is the connection of the highest point with the lowest point, which is the Ratzon Hashem. And that was worth it.
We're not giving Chava enough credit then.
She gets
We're
infinite.
not giving her enough credit.
She gets infinite credit. The way read the Torah from the Rayat.
But most people say that.
No, that's the Pasha Pshat. But what was happening up in Chassidus was the opposite mamash. The opposite mamash. Opposite mamash. Just like there's a story from the Rats. My Rebbe says it the whole time. Manis Friedman gives it over the whole time. But it was a chiddush from the Rats. And just like, this is an important point, you learn this from a chasna. You go to a chasna. You've got two dayas, yeah? Only I exist and only God exists, let's say. Yeah? You've got the Rosh and the Tzaddik, yeah? You know when they have the chasna and kala sit there and then the guys come out and dance in front of the chasna and kala in front of 200, 300 people, yeah? You know, every now and again you get that guy who just does something that you're looking at thinking, oh my God, I could never ever do that in front of, I couldn't even do that in front of my kids, let alone in front of 300 strangers, you know? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? Especially from England, yeah? And as a photographer, I was a wedding photographer for many years, so I saw it many times, yeah? What's that guy thinking? This is such a trip. What's that guy thinking? Is he thinking... He could be thinking one of two options. Again, make it pasha, yeah? One of two options. Number one, yeah? No one exists. There's just God, and there's the mitzvah of a sameach hasan b'kala. That's it. Einod milvadoi. There's just a mitzvah of, yeah? And the other guy is, no one exists, and I feel like going nuts right now. So it comes out that the tzaddik and the rasha, it comes out according to this, that Paroi and Moshe might have been indistinguishable to us. You know what a trip that is? We know they were, because the Gemara says Paro's a little midget, but Alpi the Indian, you could imagine when you understand it like this, is the biggest rasha in the whole world could be doing what looks like the exact same thing as the biggest tzaddik in the whole world. So that's the idea with Chava, and it looks like on one level it looks like the worst thing in the world. Yeah, on the way the Rayats explained it, it looks like the best thing in the whole world, the ultimate Mesiras Nefesh. Imagine, and this is really it. Is one thing putting yourself through tsaros. Imagine choosing to put your children through tsaros. That's the ultimate Mesiras Nefesh. To put them through tsaros for their own sake, most parents can't do that. That's the ultimate.
That's the mistake that Michal made when she saw David dancing in front of the Aron. She saw it as a
that's a better example than the. That's the better example than what I just gave. I never thought of it in that way, but that's exactly the point. With Aaron dancing in front, with David dancing in front of the Aaron when they brought it into Shalom.
Similar idea to the guy who's not Islam, looking like the guy who's at Tzaddik Gomer, like we said last week. On surface level, it's the exact same thing.
Exactly the same thing. This is what's called Chasidus. Chasidus means lifnim mishuras adin. What's the din? The din is the mitzvah, the halachas of the mitzvah. A chassid is someone who goes in. That's not enough to do that's gevaldik, and that's essential. But the whole avodah is now him. It's not just about getting the pratim of the mitzvah correct, it's about him being real and me serving him. So you could define in just one quick thing to remember is the avodah of Hasidus is the transitioning from I want to serve God to I want God to be served. That's a nice mnemonic to remember the whole thing. B'ezrat Hashem. Shkoyach.